I need to unburden myself because I'm questioning my sanity in this mess. My stepsister broke down, claiming no one would ever love her, then tried to charm my boyfriend, and my stepmother suggested I let her have him. I'm a 24-year-old woman, and this involves my stepmother, Linda, 52, my stepsister, Sophie, 22, my father, Michael, 55, and my partner of 3 years, Nathan, 26. To understand this, you need the backstory. When I was 8, my biological mother walked out. One morning, while Dad was at work and I was at school, she packed her bags and left. I came home to a note on the counter saying she couldn't handle motherhood anymore. My dad had to explain to his little girl why her mom wasn't coming back. He raised me alone for 2 years. When I was 10, Dad met Linda at a school event. Her daughter, Sophie, was my age but went to a different school. Sophie was born with spina bifida and used a wheelchair. Linda, recently divorced, was scraping by as a substitute teacher. Dad ran a thriving small electrical business. Linda started visiting more, bringing Sophie for playdates, and soon she was staying for dinner. I was thrilled to have another girl around, especially one who seemed so sweet. Sophie was reserved but polite, with big eyes that made you want to shield her. Dad and Linda married when I was 12. Linda quit teaching since Dad's business could support us all. We moved to a bigger wheelchair-accessible house. Linda managed the household while Dad worked long hours. Sophie and I shared the upstairs, her room equipped with a stairlift. The early years were great. Linda ensured I felt included, even though Sophie needed more care due to doctor visits and therapy. She helped with my schoolwork, cheered at my volleyball games, and made sure I had everything for school. Sophie and I got along fine. We watched shows together, and she tutored me in science while I helped her with history. At 15, I met Nathan at a summer camp for kids with disabilities and their siblings. I was there for Sophie. Nathan, 17, was there for his autistic younger brother. Nathan was kind to Sophie during camp activities, making her laugh. She seemed more outgoing around him. After camp, Nathan started visiting our house. He bonded with Sophie first. They talked about music and TV shows. He treated her like any other teen, not someone to feel sorry for. Dad approved of him because he was polite and had a job. Linda seemed glad Sophie had a friend. Over the next 2 years, Nathan became a regular at our place. Sophie lit up when he arrived. She'd ask when he was coming and get upset if plans changed. I didn't think much of it, busy with school and my part-time job at a cafe. In my senior year, things shifted. Nathan started asking to hang out with me alone sometimes. We talked more without Sophie around. He helped me study for exams and drove me to job interviews. One spring evening, on the porch after Sophie went inside, he admitted he'd liked me for a while but didn't want to complicate our friendship. We started dating that summer before I went to college. Sophie's attitude changed overnight. She became short with me. When Nathan visited, she demanded his attention and got annoyed if he spent time with me alone or with both of us. Linda noticed and asked me about it. I said I thought Sophie had a crush on Nathan. Linda said she'd talk to her. I went to college 3 hours away while Nathan stayed local, working full-time at a mechanic shop. Sophie started her senior year. On my visits home, Sophie was still distant, but Linda said she was just adjusting to me being away. Nathan and I kept up our long-distance relationship for 2 years. He visited me at school when he could, and I came home for holidays. It was tough but worked. Sophie warmed up to me over time but acted odd when Nathan was around. After college, I moved back home to job hunt. Nathan and I planned to move in together once I found steady work.
That is when things got strange again.
Sophie, now in community college taking online classes for easier mobility, was home a lot. Linda had taken a part-time job at a bookstore. Sophie kept asking about Nathan, when he'd visit, if she could call him, or if he'd like to watch a certain show with her. One day, Nathan stopped by while I was at an interview. When I got home, Dad pulled me aside, saying Sophie was acting off. She'd suggested they watch a romance movie and tried to get him to sit closer on the couch. When he kept his distance, she cried, saying no one would love her because of her condition. Nathan felt awful but left early with an excuse. I told Linda that night. She said she'd handle it, noting Sophie's limited social life might blur her sense of boundaries. I accepted that and tried to be empathetic. 2 weeks later, I started a job at an advertising firm in the next town. Nathan and I found an affordable apartment. When I told Linda about our move, her face fell. Sophie cried and ran to her room. Dad seemed happy for us, but Linda was quiet all evening. Over the next month, as we prepared to move, Linda's warmth faded. She talked about how I was leaving the family and how Sophie would miss me. Sophie alternated between ignoring me and being overly needy. She started having more medical appointments and complained of pain more often. A week before our move, Sophie had what Linda called a panic attack. She was gasping, saying she couldn't handle me leaving. Linda urged us to delay the move until Sophie was more stable. Dad backed her up. Nathan was annoyed, but agreed to wait a few weeks. Sophie's episodes increased. Whenever we mentioned moving, she'd have breathing issues or severe pain. Linda scheduled more doctor visits, saying the doctors were worried about Sophie's stress. Dad asked me to be patient. This went on for 2 months. Every time we tried to set a move date, Sophie had a health crisis. Linda said doctors advised against major changes in Sophie's environment. I started suspecting the episodes weren't entirely medical, but felt guilty for thinking that. Last month, Linda asked to talk privately. She expressed worry about Sophie's mental health, saying doctors thought Nathan's presence calmed her. She asked if Nathan could spend more time at home, maybe even move into our spare room temporarily to help Sophie adjust. I told Linda Nathan was my boyfriend, not Sophie's caretaker, and we had our own plans.
Linda es façardende.
She called me selfish, saying I didn't understand Sophie's struggles. She said Sophie deserved happiness too, and keeping Nathan from her was unkind.
Cette conversation honte me fordez.
When I told Nathan, he was floored. He said he'd never given Sophie romantic signals, and Linda's suggestion made him uneasy. Yesterday, things exploded. Linda asked me to meet at a cafe. She was nervous, which isn't like her. She started by listing all she'd done for me, treating me like her own daughter, always putting my needs first. Then she said something chilling. She revealed Sophie was deeply in love with Nathan, and her health episodes were real but triggered by seeing us together. She said Sophie believed Nathan liked her too but was with me out of duty since we were friends first. Linda asked me to end things with Nathan. She called it a temporary sacrifice to let Sophie see if they could work as a couple. She promised I could have Nathan back if it didn't work out. She said this was my chance to repay her for being a mother to me. I stared, trying to process her request. I told her Nathan wasn't an object to pass around, and he'd never shown romantic interest in Sophie. Linda said men don't always know what they want, and Nathan might surprise himself if he gave Sophie a chance. When I refused, Linda cried, calling me selfish and saying I didn't understand Clara's suffering. She said Sophie might never find love due to her disability, but Nathan was kind enough to see past it. She begged me to think of the family. I left without responding. I went straight to Nathan's work and told him everything. He was furious, calling Linda's request manipulative and wrong. He said he had no romantic feelings for Sophie and never would. Now, in our new apartment we finally moved into last week despite the drama. I'm trying to figure out what's next. Linda keeps calling and texting. Dad called this morning, asking why I'm upsetting Linda and what's so important that I can't compromise for Sophie. I haven't told him exactly what Linda asked because I'm not sure he'd believe me. Linda's always been good at seeming reasonable and caring. I'm also worried about Sophie if this all comes out. But I can't stop thinking about Linda's request. The more I reflect, the more I see it's been building for years. All those times Sophie got upset when Nathan and I were together. All the health crises that conveniently happened when we tried to move forward. Linda called me selfish for wanting my own life. Am I wrong to refuse Linda's request? Is there a middle ground I'm missing? I love my family, but I can't give up my relationship to make Sophie happy. Nathan's been kind to her, but that doesn't mean he owes her romance. I'm torn about telling Dad what Linda asked. Part of me thinks he deserves to know, but I'm scared it'll tear the family apart. Linda's been a good stepmom in many ways, and I don't want to hurt her or Sophie unnecessarily. How would you navigate this? Update 1. I didn't expect to update so soon, but things have escalated. Thank you to everyone who responded to my original post. Many suggested I tell Dad what Linda asked, and you were right. After posting, I spent days planning my approach. Linda kept calling and texting, urging me to reconsider. She sent articles about how hard it is for disabled people to find love and the importance of family support. Sophie texted too, asking when Nathan would visit and if he'd mentioned her. Nathan was getting fed up. He said the constant drama was straining our relationship, and we needed boundaries. He urged me to talk to Dad and lay it all out. He was right, but I hesitated, fearing the fallout. Last Tuesday, someone forced my hand. Dad called me at work, upset and confused. He said Linda told him Nathan and I had broken up, and Nathan was now interested in Sophie. Linda claimed I was being difficult, interfering with their new relationship. I was speechless. Dad said Linda was worried I couldn't handle the change and suggested I stay at Nathan's place to give everyone time to adjust. That's when I realized how far Linda would go. She'd lied to Dad, presenting it as a done deal. I told Dad that Linda was lying. Nathan and I were still together. He seemed baffled and said he'd talk to Linda about the mix-up. I left work early and went home. Linda and Sophie were there, silent. I asked Linda why she told Dad we'd broken up. She fidgeted, saying it was a misunderstanding. She claimed she was speaking hypothetically about what could happen if I put Sophie's needs first. Sophie sat at the table, looking between us. I could tell she knew something, but I wasn't sure how much Linda had told her. I asked Sophie if Linda had said Nathan. Linda had been priming her for this outcome, likely feeding her hopes. I asked Sophie if she truly thought Nathan had feelings for her. She got defensive, saying Nathan was always kind and had called her smart and pretty. When I asked for specifics, Sophie described friendly, supportive moments, not romantic ones. Nathan hadn't done anything inappropriate, but Linda had spun his kindness into something more and fed that to Sophie. When Dad got home, I asked to speak privately. I told him everything, Linda's cafe request, her lies about our breakup. Dad listened, his face growing grim. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. He said he needed Linda's side before deciding anything. He called her in and asked her to explain. Linda's story was completely different. She said I'd been cruel to Sophie about her feelings for Nathan, threatening to cut him off from the family if she didn't stop liking him. She claimed she only asked me to consider Sophie's feelings, not end my relationship, and that I'd exaggerated everything. Sophie backed her up. She said I'd been mean about Nathan, and Linda was just protecting her. She denied asking for a breakup, but said it hurt when I acted like she couldn't have feelings. Dad looked between us, trying to sort out the truth. He called it a complex situation and suggested we all calm down and find a way to coexist. He proposed family therapy to improve communication. That's when I saw Linda had orchestrated this. She'd prepped Sophie with a story painting me as the bad guy and herself as the caring mom. She'd likely been crafting this narrative for weeks, expecting I'd tell Dad. I told Dad I wouldn't do therapy because Linda had already shown she'd lie to twist things. I said I needed space from a family that treated me this way. Dad got angry, accusing me of overreacting. He said families face tough times, and walking away wasn't the answer. He compared me to my biological mom, who left when things got hard. That stung. I'd spent. I packed my things and moved in with Nathan. That was 2 weeks ago, and I haven't been back.
Dad keeps calling, urging-me tout comme momento.
Linda sent messages apologizing for the misunderstanding and saying she wants the best for everyone. Sophie texted, asking why I'm being so cruel to the family. But here's what bothers me. None of them have admitted what really happened. Linda hasn't owned up to asking me to end my relationship. Sophie hasn't admitted she hoped I would. Dad hasn't acknowledged Linda's lie about our breakup. Their acting like this is just a family spat that got out of hand, wanting me to come back and act normal. But I can't pretend nothing happened, knowing how far Linda will go for Sophie. Nathan's been supportive, clear he wants no part in Linda's schemes and is committed to us. He's offered to talk to Dad directly, but I'm not sure it'd help. The hardest part is I still love my family. Linda was a good stepmom for years and wasn't always manipulative. Sophie's my sister, even if she's handling this poorly. Dad raised me and worked hard for us. But love doesn't mean excusing hurtful behavior. Linda crossed a line asking me to give up Nathan for Sophie's happiness. She crossed another lying to Dad and manipulating the situation. I don't know what's next. Dad says if I don't come home and fix things, he'll cut off financial support. Linda and Sophie act like I started this by being selfish and unforgiving. Part of me wonders if I should go back and make peace. It'd be easier than this conflict and uncertainty. But then I think of Linda in that cafe, asking me to leave my boyfriend so Sophie could have him. I remember her lying to Dad. I can't go back to pretending everything's fine, ignoring Sophie's feelings or accepting Linda's manipulation as normal. So, I need advice again. How do you rebuild when your family turns on you for refusing manipulation? How do you handle the guilt of stepping away from people who claim to love you but? She called my workplace, telling my boss there was a family emergency and I needed to come home. I had to explain to my boss there was no emergency, my stepmom was lying. Linda also contacted my college friends on social media. She told them I was having a breakdown and asked them to convince me to return. I had to clarify the situation to my friends, which was embarrassing and draining. The worst was what she did to Nathan. Linda got his work number and called his boss, saying he'd acted improperly with a disabled family member and we were considering legal action. Nathan's boss called him in for a tense meeting. Nathan had to explain the situation, showing texts proving our committed relationship. Thankfully, his boss believed him, seeing it as a family dispute, not a legal issue. But Nathan was shaken, and it showed us how far Linda would go. That pushed me to take stronger action. I couldn't keep living in this chaos while Linda tried to ruin my relationship and reputation. I decided to write a detailed letter to Dad, laying out everything: Linda's cafe request, her lies, her manipulations. I told him I loved him but couldn't have a relationship if he kept enabling Linda. I said I was open to a relationship with him separate from Linda and Sophie, but only if he acknowledged the truth and stopped expecting me to tolerate Linda's behavior. I also wrote to Sophie. I said I didn't blame her for liking Nathan, but her feelings didn't entitle her to interfere in my relationship. I wished her happiness with someone who truly wanted her, but that wouldn't be Nathan. I sent the letters and waited. A week later, Dad called to meet for coffee. He looked worn out, older than I remembered. He said he'd confronted Linda about my letter. She initially denied everything, accusing me of lying to turn him against her. But as he pressed for specifics, her story fell apart. Dad said the turning point was when he asked if she told me to end things with Nathan. Linda admitted she'd suggested I prioritize Sophie's happiness, but claimed it was a reasonable family request. When Dad asked why she lied about our breakup, she said she was protecting Sophie from disappointment, believing I'd come around. She insisted she didn't mean for things to escalate. Dad apologized for not believing me sooner. He said Linda was so good at seeming reasonable and caring that he trusted her judgment over his instincts. He regretted comparing me to my biological mom and wanted to rebuild our relationship. I told Dad I appreciated his apology but needed real change before I could trust him. I said he had to set boundaries with Linda about her behavior toward me and Nathan, and not expect me to sacrifice my happiness for Sophie's needs. Dad agreed but asked if I'd give the family another chance to work things out. He said Linda was sorry and wanted to fix things. He suggested a family meeting to talk honestly. Against my instincts, I agreed to one meeting. I insisted it be at a neutral location, not their house, with Nathan present. I said if Linda lied or manipulated, I'd leave and not give another chance. The meeting was a disaster. We met at a diner, and Linda had a rehearsed speech about loving me and being sorry for misunderstandings. But when I pressed her to admit she asked me to break up with Nathan, she wouldn't. She kept saying she only wanted me to consider Sophie's feelings or think of the family's needs. She avoided saying break up, though that's exactly what she meant. Sophie was worse. She accused me of being jealous of her bond with Nathan and keeping them apart because I was insecure. She said Nathan had led her on by being kind, and I was forcing him to deny his feelings. Nathan finally spoke, saying he'd never been romantically interested in Sophie and never would be. He'd been kind as a friend and my sister, but she'd misread it. Sophie cried, saying Nathan was only saying that because I was controlling him. Linda defended Sophie, saying Nathan was being cruel to a vulnerable person. She said she couldn't believe Nathan would reject Sophie just because of her disability. That's when I knew nothing had changed. Linda and Sophie were still in a fantasy where Nathan secretly wanted Sophie but was blocked by me. They'd learned nothing from months of conflict. I got up to leave, but Dad begged me to stay and keep trying. He said families work through tough times, not abandon each other. I told him I'd tried, but Linda and Sophie refused to face reality. As we left the diner, Linda said she'd never stop fighting for Sophie's happiness. She said I could run away like my real mom, but she'd always stand by Sophie. That was the final straw. Linda saw me as an obstacle to Sophie's happiness, not a daughter she was supposed to love. No matter what I did, it wouldn't be enough because Linda would always prioritize Sophie. Nathan and I left town the next day. We were already planning to move since Nathan got a better job offer in another city. We've been here 6 weeks, and it's been calm. No manipulative calls, no guilt trips about family duty, no one asking me to sacrifice my happiness. Nathan loves his new job, and I found a better position at an advertising firm. Dad's called a few times, and our talks are polite but distant. He hopes I'll reconsider Linda and Sophie, but I've made it clear that won't happen. Told him he's welcome to visit us here if he wants a relationship, but I won't return to face Linda's manipulation. Linda sent a final text last week, saying she hoped I was happy leaving my family for a man who'd probably leave me. She said Sophie was heartbroken and blamed me for being selfish. I blocked her number. I also blocked Sophie, who kept texting about how unfair I was and how I was hurting the family. I told him he's welcome to visit us here if he wants a relationship, but I won't return to face Linda's manipulation. Linda sent a final text last week, saying she hoped I was happy leaving my family for a man who'd probably leave me. She said Sophie was heartbroken and blamed me for being selfish. I blocked her number. I also blocked Sophie, who kept texting about how unfair I was and how I was hurting the family. The thing is, I don't feel guilty anymore. For years, I believed my role was to be understanding, flexible, and sacrifice for Sophie's needs. I thought that's what good sisters and grateful daughters did. But I see now that Linda never truly saw me as her daughter. She saw me as a tool for Sophie's benefit. When I stopped being useful, she was willing to lie, sabotage my relationship, and ruin my reputation. Sophie never saw me as a sister. She saw me as a rival for Nathan's attention, then an obstacle to what she wanted. She went along with Linda's lies because it suited her. Dad was so focused on keeping peace that he sacrificed my well-being to avoid confronting Linda. That wasn't love, despite what they claimed. Love doesn't demand you give up your happiness for someone else's convenience. Love doesn't force you to accept lies and manipulation for family harmony. I'm building a new life with people who care about my well-being. Nathan's never asked me to sacrifice anything for him, never lied or manipulated me. That's what a healthy relationship looks like. I don't know if Dad will ever fully understand or if he'll always blame me for breaking the family. But I can't control his choices. I can only control mine. So I choose to surround myself with people who respect and value me. Update 3. This is my final update to close this chapter and address some concerns raised. It's been 6 months since moving away with Nathan, and it's the best decision I've made. Life here is good. Nathan got a promotion, and we're saving for a house. I work at a company where my boss respects my skills and doesn't deal with family members calling about fake emergencies. We've made friends with neighbors and joined a biking group. I never thought I could have such a normal, peaceful life. Dad visited twice. The first was tense. He kept mentioning Linda and Sophie, asking if I missed them or would forgive them. He seemed to think I'd had enough time to move on. I explained this wasn't about grudges, but protecting myself from people who'd lie and manipulate to get their way. The second visit was better. Dad accepted I wasn't coming back and stopped pushing reconciliation. We talked for hours, like our old father-daughter days. He said he was proud of the life Nathan and I are building. But he also shared things that confirmed I made the right choice. After I left, Sophie was convinced Nathan would miss her and come back. Linda fed this fantasy, suggesting they visit our new city to surprise him. Dad stopped it, but only because he worried about appearances, not because he saw it as wrong or that Nathan had been clear about his feelings. Linda also started telling their social circle I'd turned against the family because I couldn't handle Sophie's happiness. She painted herself as the patient mom whose disabled daughter was being targeted by a jealous stepsister. Some believed her, which wasn't surprising. Sophie started dating someone from an online support group for disabled people. Dad said she seems happy, and Linda's thrilled Sophie's getting the attention she deserves. Neither saw the irony that Sophie found someone once she stopped fixating on Nathan. Dad asked if I'd congratulate Sophie on her new relationship. I said no. Sophie helped Linda manipulate and control my life and never apologized or owned her actions.